To the police press conference. Let me introduce the 6 speakers to you. On the right-hand side of the stage, we have Mr. Tse Chun Tung, Chief Superintendent of PPRB. On his right-hand side, we have Mr. Kwok Pat Chiu Ryan, Deputy Chief Fire Officer Anti-North from FSD. On the right-hand side of Mr. Kwok, we have Mr. Lok Chun, Senior Superintendent Operations of Hong Kong Island. On the right-hand side of Mr. Mr. Wang Wai Shen, Senior Superintendent of Operations. On the left-hand side of Mr. Tse, we have Mr. Gong Wing Chung, Senior Superintendent of PPRB. And on the left-hand side of Mr. Kong, Mr. Lan Kwai Fong, Senior Superintendent of Organized Crime and Tribe Bureau. The speakers will say a few words first before we come to the Q&A. Each report is allowed to ask up to 3 questions. And please identify yourselves and also the organization you represent. Thank you. We would like to talk about the violent riots that took place in Hong Kong, Kowloon, and NT in the past few days, and police operation. You have just been allowed to shoot explosives and also stun guns we seized, and we will come to that later. We have also got a colleague from the FSD to explain to you the unknown gas spotted in Tuen Mun. First, I will show you some video clippings.
彌敦道附近嘅上海街同埋新填地街等等堆放咗雜物喺路面，一段廣東道多個街口地上面亦都佈滿咗翹起嘅磚。
As I go on, I will have photos on the monitor to assist my explanation. On the 20th of October, that is the past Monday, different districts in Tuen Mun had residents who reportedly smelled some unknown gas, and the scope extended from the north of Tuen Mun, Kingston Estate to Tuen Mun Pier, which was a few kilometers away, covering nearly the half of Tuen Mun. People with ulterior motive claimed that the odor came from Tai Hing operational base of the police, and they said that the police were testing tear gas there, although within a few hours the police clarified that we had not used the tear gas there. However, netizens insisted that the odor came from our operational base and then surrounded the police station that evening. And then on Monday evening, members of the public congregated on the pavement of Lan Kwai Street, saying the dissatisfaction of the odor, but they verbally assaulted the police. They put miscellaneous items onto the road to form roadblocks, and they set fire there. On the other hand, another batch of people were vandalizing Hong Kong style cafe in Blossom Garden. First, they used hard objects of a Venice garden. They use hard objects and bricks to break their glass, and they hurled petrol bombs, causing heavy smoke, threatening the lives of residents living on the upper stories. Won't this fume be hazardous to people? And then on the second evening, they surrounded the base. They removed railings and set up roadblocks, and they damaged the Hong Kong style cafe again, the same cafe, because one evening back, they already broke the glass windows, and very easily the rioters went into the cafe to cause vandalism. What has this cafe got to do with the strange odor? After repeated warnings to no avail, we surrounded these rioters and arrested 61 persons in total. All right, this is really making up things, fabricating things, and then the rioters were only vandalizing with violence to vent their feelings, and thirdly, they were vandalizing innocent shops at will. And then yesterday, there were violent activities in both Mong Kok and Central. Following their usual script, they used the banner of celebration of Halloween, and first they blocked roads, they set fire, and then they beat up innocent citizens. Around 7 p.m. at Lan Kwai Fong, it was already crowded last night, and so the police introduced crowd control and would not allow any more people to go into the area. As a result, many people congregated at the intersection of Douglas Street and Stanley Street and Queen's Road Central. Some of them threw miscellaneous items at the police and yelled, and as a result, the police announced that they were taking part in an unauthorized assembly and started to disperse the crowd. The demonstrators then stayed at different places of Central, and eventually we had to use tear gas to disperse the demonstrators. As for in Mong Kok, about 7 p.m. last night, the people who were outside Mong Kok police station started to occupy roads at the intersection of Nathan Road and Prince Road West, and they set up road barricades, and they committed arson, and they damaged traffic signs and MTR exits, and they also would not allow fire engines to go through. A little bit later, FSD colleague will elaborate. And then we started to use tear gas to disperse them. And then after midnight, they started to attack innocent civilians.
One of these incidents happened at the junction of Nathan Road and Argyle Street in Mong Kok. Some black-clad rioters surrounded a man, struck him with a long umbrella, and kicked him and hit him badly. And then that man became unconscious, and then somebody used a suspected stun gun to attack him. You can see that the rioters are really cruel in mentality and in action, and this is quite indescribable. According to Cap 238 of the laws of Hong Kong Firearms and Ammunition Ordinance, anyone who possesses a stun gun without a license, once convicted, will be fined at most $100,000 and also 14 years in prison. And also somebody was driving through, but then this car was also vandalized, and also the driver was badly hurt. Do you want to see this repeated time and again? And I'd like to say that within the Mong Kok station, we saw a car outside at Lai Chi Kok flyover, and we found that it unloaded certain things, and we found that they were compressed gas fuel, or you can see that they are hot pot gas cans, and these were in aluminum foil containers. At that time, they were not lighted, but then if they should explode, then they would not only hurt police officers, but other people nearby would also have their lives threatened. This is also the first time the police have discovered compressed gas fuel. Next, I'd like to give the floor to Mr. Kong to give you the figures, and also he will make some clarifications. From Monday to yesterday, we arrested a total of 249 people, including 175 male and 75 female, aged 13 to 61. And the offences are illegal assembly, possession of offensive weapon, possession of articles fit for unlawful use, criminal damage, attacking a police officer, and also using face covering during an unauthorized assembly. And I'd like to talk about the case about the stun gun. We have always been aware that somebody was peddling contraband ammunition and weapons online, including stun guns and also extendable batons. And the Kowloon West Criminal Crime Wing was investigating, and we covered it as a buyer, and we successfully bought 20 extendable batons and 10 stun guns from him, and we arrested this man. I'd like to say that extendable batons is termed a contraband or prohibited weapon under the law. If there is a conviction, the highest penalty is 3 years in prison and also a fine of $100,000. As Mr. Chair was saying, that if you possess a stun gun, once you are convicted, you can be fined $100,000 and imprisonment of 14 years. And this is being followed up by the West Kowloon Crime Wing. And also I'd like to talk about a court case. And a man was suspected to spray paint some road signs on 16th of October. And he was prosecuted for criminal damage, and he was taken to court this morning in Kwun Tong Magistracy. And about the use of ammunition, on Monday we used 19 CS grenade and CS round and 1 rubber bullet. On Tuesday we did not use any ammunition. On Wednesday we used 4 rubber bullets, 1 super sock, and 1 sponge grenade. And yesterday, on the 31st of October, Thursday, we used 125 tear gas rounds, 28 rubber bullets, 4 super sock, and 4 sponge grenade. In the past few days, 2 police officers were hurt during operation. Last night, 1 police officer was at the junction of Prince Edward Road and Tung Choi Street in Mong Kok. He intercepted a rioter, but he was attacked by that rioter, and he had a rash and swelling on his chest, and he was sent to hospital. And then also last night, a police officer was in Shanghai Street in Mong Kok, and he was pushed to the ground by a rioter when he was trying to arrest the rioter, and his waist, his arm, and also his leg were scratched, and he was sent to hospital as well. Now I'd like to make a few clarifications. First of all, we saw that at the Hong Kong Design Institute on Wednesday, again there was widespread vandalism. I'd like to clarify that actually we received a report which should have come from the school, so we went on site. But then when we were on site, we could not find the one making the report. So reluctantly, we left. In this incident, we'd like to point out that it is clear that somebody was maliciously destroying facilities at school, but then it is unfortunate that the relevant authorities did not want to provide assistance to the police, and this is in a way condoning and conniving with violence. I could see that somebody was hoisting the flag of freedom and democracy, but then they lightly talked about their own violence. And then about 2 days ago, there was a criminal damage case on the rails of light rail. The Hong Kong MTR company reported a case to us that on the 25th and also on the 30th of October, the engineering staff found that there were clear-cut damage at their Jinsa station and Tuen Mun station. They thought that such cuts were not done by natural wear and tear, and they did not rule out the possibility that there was malicious damage done by an electric saw. So they reported the case to us, and this is listed as a criminal damage case. In the first case, that is the one on the 25th of October, MTR had to replace that section of the track. And I'd like to point out that had it not been for the engineering staff of MTR who were alert and who discovered the relevant damage in time, a serious train incident might take place, and it would lead to injuries and even fatalities. So the rioters pay no regard to people's safety. And also we found that on the internet somebody smeared us saying that we had no reason, but we went into some private premises to make arrests. I'd like to do some clarification here. On the 30th of October, the police wanted to round up some rioters in Tuen Mun area, but then they dispersed in different directions. We saw that some of them ran into Yetsen house of Kingston Estate. So we exercised our power under Section 50 of Cap 238 of the laws of Hong Kong, the police force ordinance, and we went into the lobby of that building to make arrests, and we intercepted dozens of people there. After investigation, we found that some of them were residents of the building, so we allowed them to go. We did not arrest them. But then among those dozens intercepted, we confirmed that 33 people, including 24 males, 9 females, who were not residents of the building. We arrested them on the offense of illegal assembly. We reiterate that rioters have fled into these lobbies of buildings, and according to our powers in the police force ordinance, we had the authority to go in to arrest them because we saw that they committed offenses outside that building. And I believe Hong Kong residents wouldn't like to see residents or rioters going into your building using it as a refuge. I'd like to remind you that if you obstruct police officers going into any premise to make arrests, well, you are not only condoning and conniving with violence, you may actually be guilty of obstructing police officers in the discharge of their duties, and you may be arrested, and then we will enforce the law resolutely.
Now I hand over to Mr. Kwok from the FSC. Thank you. On the 31st of October, we had operations related to our department and our ambulance services, and also suspected pungent gas found in Tuen Mun. On the 30th of October, number of fires related to us were 22 in total. Emergency calls 12 cases. In yesterday's operations, we found that demonstrators were setting fire and to roadblocks in Mong Kok, Prince Edward, and Central MTL exits. There were blockage of exits and also arson. Yesterday, some demonstrators obstructed us from providing emergency services. There are two cases I'd like to mention in particular. At around 9:21 p.m. on the 31st of October last night, we were called to deal with a Class 1 fire at the junction of Douglas Road and Nathan Road. And then an ambulance or fire engine was dispatched when it reached number 537 of Nathan Road. We were stopped by the demonstrators. We tried to use our PA system on the fire engine, asking demonstrators to give way so that we can carry out our duties at the scene of fire. However, demonstrators resisted. It was only after 10 minutes when the police arrived that the road was cleared and we were allowed to go to the scene. And then one took place at around 2:04 this morning on the 1st of November. We were called to exit A1 of Mong Kok Station to deal with a Class 1 fire. We left Yin Po Fong Street, and then at around Tung Choi Street we encountered a major roadblock and we could not arrive at the scene of fire expeditiously. We had no choice but to make a day tour to arrive at the scene via Mong Kok Road. But as we all know, there are various roadblocks along the way, and we could not reach the scene directly, and we could only park at Portland Street, and our firemen had to manually take various firefighting apparatus to the scene. I'd like to stress once again that our duty is to provide emergency firefighting and ambulance services to the public, and time is of essence, and we urge people to stop obstructing us from carrying out our duties because bystanders can cause harm as well. So please do not condone serious violence acts such as arson and hurling of petrol bombs, because people nearby may be endangered, and that could include reporters like you were present. And if the heavy smoke and fire spread to nearby buildings, the consequence can be very dire. On the 28th of October, the FSD received several calls from members of the public saying that they have inhaled unknown gases. From 3:33 p.m. to 4:25 p.m., we received 18 related emergency calls. They claimed that at Lan Kwai Estate, Kingston Estate, Tin Can Estate, Tai Hing Estate, Siu Kwang Court, Ho Hing Street, Sunway Court, the Northwest Tuen Mun swimming pool, and near Hong Chang Road, there were pungent gas spotted. At 3:33 p.m. when we received the first emergency call, the reporter claimed that they could smell pungent gas from Sunway, and then we dispatched 4 fire engines and 2 ambulances, 15 firemen in total to the rescue. On our way, someone told us that the exact location should be number 95 Minkham Road, that is at the swimming pool of Northwest Tuen Mun. 5 minutes after we received the call, i.e. 3:38 p.m., we arrived at the swimming pool, and our colleagues immediately started investigation. We used gas detection devices to try to identify the source of the pungent gas. But after investigation and detection with our devices, we could not find the leakage of any unknown gas at the swimming pool. Subsequently, we received a few more emergency calls claiming that pungent gas was identified somewhere in the locations I just told you. There were Long Puto Road, Minkham Road, Tin King Road, Sakpaita Road, Ching Chong Kun Road, Chanwan Road, and the vicinity. Because the coverage is so wide, we went to the locations reported, and then along the roads I just mentioned, we carry out a mass investigation trying to detect whether there was any gas leakage. According to officers involved in the investigation, at the start of the investigation, they could faintly smell some pungent gas, but nothing unknown source of the unknown gas could be found, and subsequently they could not smell any pungent gas. At the bus station of Shanking Station, a man and a woman reportedly felt unwell after inhaling pungent gas. After preliminary first aid given as on the spot, they turned down the offer to be hospitalized, and other than that, we have not received any more emergency calls. So at 5:12 p.m. on the same day, we stopped our investigation. Still, in the 2 days that followed, i.e. on the 29th and the 30th of August, FSD had sent men to investigate once again in the area covered, and no irregularity was spotted. Thank you. I'd like to talk about public meetings and rallies that will take place tomorrow and the day after. On the 2nd and 3rd of November, that is on Saturday and Sunday, we've received 5 notifications of public meetings and rallies on Hong Kong Island. 4 will take place on Saturday, i.e. the 2nd of November. Another one, public possession, will take place on the 3rd of November, i.e. Sunday. These 5 public activities will take place in Victoria Park, Tamar Garden, Chater Garden, and Edinburgh Place. And then there will also be a rally from Victoria Park to Harcourt Garden. We have done risk assessments of all 5 cases. After our risk assessment, because for reasons of public safety, public order, and protection of other persons' rights and freedom, we have already issued a notice to object their public meetings and rallies for 3 cases involving the 30th on the 30th of October and the 1st of November, and that will be the public meeting at Victoria Park and Tamar Garden to be held on the 2nd of November, and also the public rally from Victoria Park to Harcourt Garden on the 3rd of November. I think in the past few months we have seen how peaceful and rational public meetings could descend into violent clashes, and they are more. There is a rising trend for them to be more and more radical. They would remove railings to make roadblocks, and they would hurl petrol bombs at the police and use corrosive liquid and cutters to attack our colleagues, and they would even vandalize government facilities and shops, and then they may also hurl petrol bombs and set fire to these places. Innocent citizens have been affected, even for ordinary members of the public. If they hold different political views, even though they may remain silent, they will be criminally, or they will be illegally jailed and then even beaten up. And sometimes the radical demonstrators have gone into peaceful demonstrators causing threats, and you may eventually be affected as well. We are always very prudent in assessing the risks involved of different public meetings in deciding whether a notice of no objection or an objection should be issued. As I said, the radical demonstrators are getting more violent, and their impact on the society is becoming more widespread. There is intelligence showing that rioters again would make use of such mass rallies on the weekend in order to endanger public safety, and such violent acts will certainly cause danger and risk to
the participants, the public, journalists on site, and also police officers. Therefore, in order to maintain public safety and public order and also to protect other people's rights and freedoms, we have therefore decided to object to the 3 gatherings. And one of those is now the subject of an appeal, and this was the police decision was upheld. And then there is another one, the appeal of which will be heard today. I'd like to reiterate that we definitely respect very much the freedom and rights of the public to engage in public rallies and demonstrations, and it is always our policy to assist the same for the public. According to the Public Order Ordinance and also the Police Force Ordinance, we have the social responsibility to maintain public order and public safety. We must make responsible decisions and do our very best to protect the life and limb and property of the public. That is all I'd like to say. I will make a conclusion. We are aware that many citizens were affected by this at the scenes of violence. Maybe they were affected by road blockades and then tear gas, and then they would put the blame on the police. Of course, we don't want to also affect innocent people. But then if somebody breaks the law, we have no choice but to enforce the law. Very often, protests now descend into riots nowadays, and rioters use lethal means, for example, hurling petrol bombs, bricks, and also corrosive acids in order to attack police officers. People who stand around such scenes should leave as early as possible because the situation is very dangerous. What is very sad is that every weekend when people want to go out, they now have no freedom to decide where they go, but they will have to see where the rioters will be gathering, and such choices or decisions are already part of their lives. What is even sadder is that this week and even on weekdays, we have seen riots happening in many districts. I don't really want to say this, but at this stage, when people want to go out, you have to be on the alert all the time to see whether there are riots in the vicinity, and then you should leave as soon as possible and go to a safe place. In fact, the scenes of violence and vandalism have actually disturbed many people, and people are getting tired of this. We can see that rioters usually choose very crowded places in order to make a scene, like where people go to work most and most people live. And very often they don't only target the police, and they disregard people on the road. They are setting up roadblocks and they set fire to places. And the police have to enforce the law because it's the right thing to do, and we have united heart and mind in order to stop violence and curb the disturbances. We appeal to everybody not to condone or connive with rioters in word or in action. We must stop this, and we must restore order.
Good afternoon. Over the few days, clashes erupted in various districts, and radical protesters yet again resort to extreme violence. Because of this, our frontline officers had to deploy minimum necessary force for dispersal. Among our observations, two discoveries concern us the most: seizure of stun guns and homemade mechanical bombs. Here I'll give an overview of the violent incidents. In Tuen Mun, residents reported that odd smell had clouded a large area of the neighborhood in Tuen Mun. Certain people alleged the source was the police Tai Hing operational base. After investigation, we have strongly rejected such accusation. We have clarified that we had not used tear smoke in Tuen Mun, but unfortunately, hate is gonna hate. On Monday and Wednesday, radical protesters still in the vicinity of Tai Hing operational base and committed various destructive acts, like vandalizing shops, hurling petrol bombs into a restaurant, and building barricades to paralyze traffic. Such reckless acts posed a grave threat to the residential neighborhood of Tuen Mun, which we strongly condemn. Moving on, yesterday, Halloween turned into horror for many, as violent protesters hijacked festive celebration to go on a rampage in Central and Mong Kok. In Lan Kwai Fong, the area was closed at 7:30 p.m. due to overcrowding. But then the crowds turned violent and started to hurl objects at police officers. These necessitate our use of force, including tear gas, for dispersal. And history repeated itself in Mong Kok. Rioters started street fires, inflicted extensive damage to public properties and transport facilities. In the most alarming case, rioters surrounded a man, beat him up, struck him with long umbrellas, kicked it and stormed him so brutally that he became unconscious. What's worse, at that point, rioters used a suspected stun gun to attack the victim, who was left with bloody and life-threatening injuries. This dangerous violence is monstrous. Possession of a stun gun is also an offense under the Hong Kong laws, liable to maximum penalty of $100,000 and 14 years of imprisonment. Another worrying observation is homemade mechanical bombs were seized in a flyover in Prince Edward. This kind of bomb was made with gas cans commonly used for cooking hot pot, but are indeed very dangerous and destructive when ignited. We express the strongest condemnation against this escalating violence. Moving on, the police have received 5 notifications of intentions to hold public order events in Hong Kong Island in the coming weekend. We have conducted independent risk assessment for each of these applications and issued letters of objection to 3 of them, out of concern about public safety, public order, and protection of rights and freedoms of others. From my understanding, the organizers have filed appeals to the appeal board and we shall await their final rulings. Now I'll give you a brief update on arrest figures. Since last Monday, we have arrested 249 people, consisting of 175 males and 74 females, aged between 13 and 61 years old. Offenses including unlawful assembly, possession of offensive weapons, using facial covering at unlawful assembly, etc. One operation we'd like to highlight is that earlier today, our officers mount a covert operation and arrested a male for selling 20 extendable batons and 10 stun guns. In conclusion, every member in the society should be alarmed by the escalating violence rioters have used in recent protests. The seizure of stun guns and homemade mechanical bombs is bad omen for Hong Kong, as such dangerous weapons have fallen into the hands of those with ill intentions. It is imperative that we all do what we can to end this violence. Please help us and support our effort to restore Hong Kong's safety and stability. Thank you.
好，問題時間開始。好，商台啊。
Commercial radio. Thank you. 3 questions, please. One, last night at Lan Kwai Fong, it was about at 8 p.m. that you closed off Lan Kwai Fong. At that time, there were no clashes. Why did you close off Lan Kwai Fong at such an early hour? In previous Halloweens, many people would gather there to celebrate. You closed it off at an early hour, and people did not have any celebration. So did you have to take responsibility for that? And secondly, some journalists, like an RTHK journalist, he was pushed, and then he was trying to ask you for your warrant card, but then he was sprayed OC foam right in the face. You said you need to enforce the law, but then do you still want to do this, that you spray the reporters in the face at close range? And then about public order events tomorrow, you said you received a few applications. 2 of those were going to be in Central and Admiralty. Why did you approve those 2 and you did not approve the other 3? And also in Victoria Park tomorrow, some Democratic District Council candidates say that they are going to hold gatherings there. Is it that if there is a big crowd, you would certainly disperse them?
I invite Mr. Mun to answer all 3 questions. All right, I'll take the first one. And that is about why Lan Kwai Fong was closed so early yesterday, preventing people from celebrating. Now, we have to use a lot of police manpower to assist people to celebrate at Halloween at Lan Kwai Fong every year. Given the current situation, we understand that such meetings have a lot of potential risks. Prior to the Halloween, we had very close liaison with Lan Kwai Fong Association. We had a meeting with them on what could be done yesterday to ensure public safety and to ensure that revelers there will not be affected by possible violence. You may recall that in 1993, there was a stampede in Lan Kwai Fong at Halloween. Actually, anyway, at Halloween at Lan Kwai Fong. Now, if we did not tackle the problem properly, there may be another stampede at Lan Kwai Fong. So we have maintained liaison with Lan Kwai Fong Association all along. In Mong Kok and Prince Edward, there were already violence. And then there was also an unlawful rally where 400 to 500 took part moving towards Lan Kwai Fong. There might be people with a tendency of violence in the crowd, which we don't know, and we've received information that at the peak of reveling at Lan Kwai Fong, our colleagues might be attacked with metro bombs. We saw people wearing V for Vendetta masks. They chanted slogans. We didn't know whether they had any violence tendency. So based on the reasons I just said, and after our assessment, at about 7:20 p.m. last night, we discussed with the association again, and we told it that given the danger involved, we should close Lan Kwai Fong and do not allow newcomers to ensure the safety of all, and the association agreed to our decision. So that's for the first question. The second question is about a reporter from RTHK being pepper sprayed. According to information I have, it was at the intersection of Pedder Street and Queen's Road Central. Our colleagues were carrying crowd control there because there were already too big a crowd, and we didn't want people to move further westwards towards Queen's Road Central. So sentiments were high, and there were people standing there, and a lady was arrested for disorderly behavior in public. She said and did something provocative, and she left for the first occasion. And then she came back doing the same things, and then we gave her one more warning and arrested him. And there were 4 persons wearing masks trying to snatch her away from us. I understand that reporters were there trying to cover the event. We wanted to control the situation. We want to avoid the lady being snatched, so we had to use pepper spray. For sure, we did not deliberately use pepper spray on our reporters. But let me appeal to the media. Now, if you stand between the police and violent demonstrators, you could get hurt. You're bound to be hurt. Regarding the rallies tomorrow, as I said, there are 4 to be held tomorrow. At Victoria Park, Tamer Garden, Edinburgh Place, and another one. And on Sunday, there is a public rally from Victoria Park to Harcourt Garden. 3 out of the 5 we have already objected to or prohibited. You asked whether we were fair. to all these applications. Now, on the 9th of June, starting from the 9th of June to now, all public meetings and rallies related to the anti-extradition law have been processed. Over 80% of them had notification of no objection. For the public meetings and rallies to be held in the coming weekend, we carried out a separate assessment for each application, looking at the objective, the location, the number of participants, and other factors affecting public safety and security. We separately assess each and every case. Now, we have opposed applications coming from different political views. The political convictions or affiliations involved is not among the factors we make our decision. As regards the meeting of pan-democratic candidates tomorrow, and what will be the police tactics. As I said, the police policy is to assist peaceful and lawful public meetings and rallies. We'll continue to do this. But we can see that from June to now, very often, peaceful public meetings may descend into violent clashes when there are unlawful acts such as wounding and arson. We have to intervene in the first instance. Cable. Last night, as said by the media, a reporter was pepper sprayed directly in Mong Kok. A man was also pepper sprayed at very close distance. What have they done to the fact that the police had to pepper spray them? And what is the safety distance for use of pepper spray? What is the minimum safe distance? And then in Mong Kok, some person was injured by Baton. He was a social worker. In fact, under PGO, you are only allowed to use a baton when you are faced with a threatening situation. And in Tuen Mun, when it comes to a restaurant, well, you need to have specified suspects or targets before you can go into a private premises to make any arrest. And then the female shop operator of the shop was arrested. For what offense? Has she been charged? Is she still being detained? And then the police also reportedly asked journalists to remove their masks because they have not used tear gas. I'd like to know whether reporters are only allowed to put on their face masks after you have used tear gas, and has been any misunderstanding, because in previous press meetings, Mr. Jie said that it was unacceptable to allow to ask or to forcefully remove the mask of reporters. Can you please clarify? The first question, the use of pepper spray in Mong Kok. I don't know what case you are talking about. You talked about the use of pepper spray at very close range. Well, I will give us a consolidated reply first, and I will take the question about the social worker later. And you asked about what happened inside a private residential development and a restaurant in Tuen Mun. I will also take that question later. Mr. Wong, regarding the use of pepper spray and also the safety distance. Now, we don't intend to harm using the momentum of the spray. Rather, it contains pepper irritants. It would stick to the skin of the persons concerned, causing some discomfort, so that it will cooperate with the police. Regarding the distance. It depends on how far that person is away from us.
The thing is, you have to land the pepper spray on his skin so that it is effective. But it doesn't mean that the closer it is, the more effective it is. But you have to have the pepper spray sticking to his skin. So whether it is not allowed, if it is too close, well, you have to allow the pepper spray to stick to the body of that person. So that's the effect we want to achieve. As to the way to use pepper spray, as I said, we want the person to feel pain or discomfort so that he will stop his uncooperative acts. Therefore, when we do so, we will first issue a warning, and then in different circumstances, when I was on duty these past few nights, I could see that, and also you could see from live broadcasts of media organizations, you could see that the police would give a few warnings, but still people did not cooperate, and he did not want to cooperate with the police. As I said, if people cooperate with us, the police will not have to deal with acts at close range. And we might have to use pepper spray in certain circumstances so that the conflict between this citizen and us will be stopped and his violent act or uncooperative act will be stopped. About your second question, the social worker case in Mong Kok, I will answer in two parts. First, our understanding of the case, and secondly, our response. First, last night, according to information from my colleague, it was about 9 p.m. In Mong Kok, we were doing some dispersal action. We saw rioters blocking the streets near Nathan Road and Aaron Street. And the rioter was running away in the direction of Aaron Street. So they were giving chase. And we saw that he was mixing himself in a crowd, and the police used a baton, and a man, I think it was the social worker you talked about, was hurt, and then somebody called the ambulance and he was sent to hospital. When it was done, he was conscious, and then the police arrested another man, not him, who was 18 years old, for obstructing police officers. Now, in a very chaotic situation, if somebody should get hurt, that is not something we want to see. We proactively went on clips online. Well, actually, I still cannot make a judgment on the overall situation then. But if somebody who is hurt is aggrieved, first of all, he can complain to CAPO, and we will certainly deal with it fairly. And at the same time, if in the police enforcement action, if he is hurt and he can apply to the TAVAS scheme, or a scheme that is to compensate people or financial assistance if someone is hurt during law enforcement actions. I'd like to reiterate on this occasion that in these past few months, the police have been enforcing the law and discharging our duties in very chaotic and violent situations. And we have always proposed to the public that you should not stay at such a scene, because we are duty-bound to take dispersal action to prevent deterioration of the situation. When we take dispersal action, everybody has to go. If because of your duties or if somebody chooses to stay at the scene, now these people may be reporters and also the social worker you talked about, they should stay at a long distance away from where the police are enforcing the law in order to protect their own personal safety. We have no intention, and we will not deliberately target any occupation, including social workers. If anyone should choose to stay at a very dangerous scene because of his work or his own reasons, then he must assess his own risk and protect his own safety. I hope you understand that in a very chaotic, violent scene, where in fact in the past few months many police officers were injured and some arrested people were snatched away. The suspect may be running into a crowd for cover, and if you still ask police officers in such a chaotic situation to distinguish the roles of different people, it is very difficult. I would appeal to people who are not taking part in the action should go and not stay and make the police misunderstand that you are actually involved in the violent acts. In the past few months, we are aware that some people who claim themselves to be social workers say that they were there to protect young people, but then they obstruct the police. They held hands to form a human chain in order to block the police. They are condoning the people doing illegal acts, and the relevant act may be amounting to obstructing police officers. Let's watch a clip.
呢段片段呢就發生喺都1-2個月之前。
This happened 1 or 2 months ago in Mong Kok, when the police were charging forward a group of people who claimed themselves to be reporters. As you could see, they formed a human chain and they were asking people behind them to run, and they were obstructing police officers who were charging forward. So you could see that happening. And lastly, well, I'm not a professional social worker, but I'm of the view that social workers should seek to protect our young people. But then in such dangerous situations, they should appeal to young people to leave as soon as possible. And also, when they are safe themselves, they should advise people who are engaged in illegal acts to stop the illegal acts. Mr. Kong, third part. In the past few months, we have heard concern from the public about when the police can go into private premises to enforce the law. Let me again tell you the powers given to the police by the law. According to Cap 238, Section 50, Bracket 3 of the Police Force Ordinance, if any police officer has reason to believe that anyone who should be arrested has gone into a place, those people who live there or who manage the place, well, when requested by a police officer, should allow the police officers to go inside and also give all reasonable facilitation for our officers to go in to search and make arrests. If people who live there or manage the place are unwilling to cooperate, then Section 50, Bracket 4, empowers police officers to go into the place without a warrant. If those people who live there or manage the place continue to obstruct police officers, we can even use reasonable force to make entry. The reporter's question has to do with the situation on the 30th of October at Kingston Estate. I already covered that in my opening remarks. At that time, our officers saw dozens of people who ran into the lobby of this building during our dispersal action. So their identity was known to us, and we wanted to go in to do basic investigation, and that was the responsible thing to do. In the end, we found that some of them were residents of that building, but 30 out of them were not. Well, you tell me why they were there. And then on the same night, at a restaurant, we again enforced the law. And that evening was about 10:45 in the evening. A group of people gathered at Lan Kwai Street and Leung Tek Street at the junction there. And they were shouting and involved in provocative acts. And our officers were of the view that it was very likely that they would be disturbing the public peace. So after issuing verbal warnings asking them to go, well, we did not succeed.
So we started a dispersal and arrest operation. Colleagues saw two of the people who were yelling and causing disturbance of society ran into the restaurant, and so we wanted to effect arrest. However, the shop operator and probably her assistant tried to obstruct us. We tried to explain to them our purpose for entering the restaurant. We also gave them verbal warnings. However, the shop proprietor and her assistant refused to allow our colleagues to enter. So, with no choice left, we had to exercise our power under Section 54 of the Police Force Ordinance. We arrested 4 persons, including the shop operator and her assistant, for obstruction of the police in carrying out their duties. And for the remaining 2 arrested persons, there were 2 who fled into the restaurant in our dispersal action. They were arrested for unlawful assembly. So the law allows us to go into private premises to take action, whether it be the security guards or the persons in charge of the private premises. When time permits, we will try to explain to them our purpose for entering the place, and they should provide us with all reasonable assistance. That's the best. If they obstruct us unreasonably, they may be charged with obstruction of the police. Some reporters, or the right for reporters to be wearing face masks at scenes of violence. Well, under the PFC prohibition of face covering regulation, now we'll talk about Section 3, and Section 5 is about Section 3 has got 3 defenses. Now, that doesn't mean that you are given any privilege or exemption. One of the 3 defenses here, I read it out. The person is engaged in a professional employment and is carrying out acts or behavior relevant to the employment or profession, and use face covering for his own safety. And the defense can apply to, is available to reporters covering an event there and for their personal safety. So you talked about the use of tear gas. When tear gas is deployed, you need to wear a face mask to cover your face. This is certainly one of the defenses available. And a reporter asked, after tear gas has been deployed and has dispersed, can I wear it? Yes, that is a defense. But a defense doesn't mean that it is a privilege or exemption. So in rioting scene, the police have the right to stop a person to confirm his job and the nature of his work there, and the purpose for wearing the face mask to ensure that it is in line with the defense I just outlined. So much for the 4th question.
A few English questions from RTHK English News. First on Lan Kwai Fong operation yesterday. By stationing officers at Lan Kwai Fong entrance and refusing entry so early, is that a tactical mistake though? Because won't that just incite the crowd and make people who want to just go and have a drink angrier? And is it really necessary when it's Halloween and gatherings like this on the streets are normal? And I mean, why is it deemed an illegal assembly when it's something that happened every year? And also, Lan Kwai Fong Association said there is a drop of 50% in business due to the police arrangement. How would you respond to that, and do you think the police is to blame? Second question, regarding tomorrow's arrangement. Yes, as the reporter has just said, some district council hopefuls are going to have small meetings, like group-by-group meetings in Victoria Park tomorrow, and they said it's illegal. So under what circumstances would the police take maybe clear Victoria Park, and it's what they're doing really legal? And will the police also, under what circumstances, ask the two rallies in Central who have been approved to cut their meeting short and end the event maybe in 15 minutes or so? Third question regarding police treatment of journalists. And I mean, my colleague was pepper sprayed just for asking a question. He was obviously targeted. He wasn't a collateral damage during an operation. So will you apologize for pepper spraying my colleague right at his face? And also about treatment of another journalist. Did PPRB officer leak the press card and personal information of a journalist who launched a protest here on Monday, who was representing us journalists, not just the two of them? Yes or no? Did you guys leak the information?
Okay, I will invite Mr. Mun to answer the first three questions. Thank you.
For the first question about whether it is was it tactically wrong, I put it that way. That's what you said, for police to intervene or to close down the Lan Kwai Fong at such an early stage. So actually, I already answered it in Chinese, so I'll just try to do it again in English. So first of all, I just want everybody to know, crowd management at Lan Kwai Fong during Halloween, we do it every year, and we put a lot of resources to do it, to ensure and to facilitate people to go there to celebrate. But we have to remember, back in the 90s, 1993, there's a stampede causing a lot of lost life during that, and we don't want to see that to happen again, especially against the background since June of this year. Many gatherings or meetings or procession turned violent in the end. So when we do our threat assessment, we have to bear all this in mind. So what happened yesterday was, before I talk about yesterday, before actually Halloween yesterday, we had a close liaison, close communication with the Lan Kwai Fong Association, telling them that there may be a threat yesterday, and how we can have a system or a mechanism in place so that we can communicate with each other. The sole aim is to ensure that the public safety and the people going to Lan Kwai Fong yesterday will be celebrating in the safest manner possible. So going back to yesterday, so we start telling Lan Kwai Fong Association that we feel there will be risk at around 7 o'clock, around 7:20. First of all, there's a violence already happening in Mong Kok and Prince Edward. People are actually barricading the roads, setting fire in different places. And second of all, there's an unauthorized assembly, which started in Victoria Park, going all the way to Lan Kwai Fong, which is their final destination. We cannot be sure what kind of elements or what kind of people is in this procession, which consists of around 400 to 500. And third of all, we received information that some troublemakers, they will be throwing petrol bombs against the police, especially at the time that is busiest in Lan Kwai Fong. And in fact, we have spotted around 20 to 30 masked protesters in the vendetta mask, chanting slogans, and we cannot assure or we cannot confirm whether they are violent or not. So based on all this information, we had communicated with the association again, and telling them that we should close down to ensure that nobody get hurt inside Lan Kwai Fong, which is a slope and a very small and tight place. And after we told them about our threat assessment, actually the association agreed with our arrangement, and we started the close down around 7:30 yesterday night, and then actually it was closed down around 8. I think what we have to do is to strike a balance between public safety and freedom of other people to go celebrate or to do whatever they want to do, right? But I would say that on this occasion, based on the threat assessment that we've made, safety should outweigh the need or the freedom to celebrate during yesterday night. So that's my answer for your first question. So about the meeting or the gathering with the district council from the Pan Democrats parties tomorrow, I think one of the questions you asked is it legal? We have to look at. I think we have to look at the overall picture of why this is happening, right? Because in the first place, there's supposed to be a public meeting by an organizer, which said it will be around 10,000 people inside. Okay. And after our threat assessment, we think that if we let this to continue, there will be public order and public safety risk. And then the organizer actually appealed this decision that the police made. And then we took it to the commission, the public order, the appeal board, for the panel members and the chairman to make a decision whether this should continue. And the final decision from the panel was that it's not safe to continue with this meeting. And after such a decision has been made, then someone come out and say that, oh, we're going to organize something else in a different manner. But in fact, it's actually the same thing. They're saying that, oh, each of the district councillor will have less than 50 people inside Victoria Park, right? But they're actually doing the same thing with the same purpose. So in my interpretation, I would say that if it is for the same purpose with over 50 people inside, it will contravene the law. But that is not what we try to look at. All we try to look at is to ensure that every meeting or every procession is conducted in a safe and orderly manner. As long as it is safe and orderly, I think that is the most important consideration that we need to make. And about what's going to happen tomorrow, say there will be a lot of people inside Victoria Park. We won't go in and try to arrest everybody inside just because it, from a law point of view, it is an unauthorized assembly. Okay, I think if that many people are going to show up and they think that they have the freedom to express themselves inside the meeting, as long as it is peaceful, without any breach of the peace, we will try our best not to intervene the gathering. But we have a responsibility under the law, under the rule of law, to give a warning, to tell people that what they're doing is unlawful. So this is one of the things that we might do. We have to tell the people that is inside what they're doing is unlawful. So we will do that.
How about the two rallies with no laws approved? In Central.
So same with those, right? We already issued a letter of no objection for both of those meetings. One is in Edinburgh Place, and the other one I think is in Cheddar Garden. Yes. We set off conditions inside the letter of no objection to ensure the safety of those meetings. So we are not going to just abruptly stop those meetings without any reasons. The only reason why we would stop them before the conclusion time is because also, again, it's the public order and public safety issue. If there's a breach of the peace inside the meeting, or someone is inside doing any violent acts, of course we have to intervene. Or somewhere else, say in Wan Chai or in Causeway Bay, there are some violence that's going on, which we think will overspill into Central, causing public order and public safety risk to those participants in this lawful assembly. Then of course we'll have to advise the person in charge or the organizer that they may have to cut short their meetings to ensure the safety of the participants. So I think I have answered in most of your questions, if not all. Okay, thanks.
My first question is about
Mr. Mun, can you answer this question about the RTHK reporter?
So the reporter will launch a protest here. The information being leaked, possibly by PPLB.
Oh, yes. I'll answer the first one about the reporter from yesterday, Lan Kwai Fong incident. Okay, based on my knowledge and based on the information I have in hand, the officer at that time was conducting an arrest at the junction of Pettit Street and Queens Road Central. Okay, and we actually arrested a female for disorderly conduct in public place. And during the arrest, there are scuffles going on. And I know that it's a difficult job for reporters to report the situation at that time. But if reporters stand right in between of police officers and violent protesters, of course, they will put themselves at risk. As to what you have said, you said that the officer intentionally sprayed the pepper spray onto the reporters. I'm not very sure what actually happened, if that actually happened. Like John Sir said earlier, if you think that the police conduct of what police have done in executing their duties are wrong or unreasonable, we have a system, we have a mechanism in place. They can, of course, complain the officer concerned, and we will follow up with an investigation. And also, there will be an independent police commission, and they can also monitor the progress and the findings of this complaint. So that's all I have to say. Thanks.
Okay, for your fourth question, I'm going to answer you, but not in a yes or no format. The 4 p.m. press conference is a key communication channel between the police and the general public. And through this press conference in the last few months, we disseminate some key messages and information and make clarification before holding the Q&A section for reporters. Different media will live stream our press conference on TV and online. In order for this press conference to function well, a good discipline is crucial. It is certainly not a proper platform for a protest inside this press conference room. Okay, let me answer my question first. On that day, the press conference had already started, and the freelance reporter came in the middle of the show. We had a flexible registration system for reporters to give him or her convenience. So at that time, we only asked her for very simple information, like her name, telephone number, and media organization before letting her coming in. She claimed to come from a foreign media company. But later, the senior management of that foreign media company visited us and confirmed that she was not an employee of the company. The freelancer did not come to the press conference on behalf of that company on that day either. This showed that she did indeed misrepresenting herself to deceive our officers into allowing her to enter this press conference room. Such behavior is certainly irresponsible and dishonest. It is also unfair for other professional media. After that incident, with her verbal consent, our officers did take a photo of her Hong Kong JA press card. But at that time, many other reporters were around, and I'm not sure whether they took photos on her press card as well. So far, we have not received any reports from any reporters involved about leakage of personal data. But we welcome who feels they are a victim of unlawful data leakage. They may come forward and make a police report, and we will investigate fairly and seriously. But on this point, the incident reminds me of a similar incident that happened in August. A reporter from another mainland media was surrounded and questioned by a crowd of reporters. She was pressured to show her press card and name card. And then many local reporters took photos of her press card, and the photos circulate around the social media. And that's why I would like to say is that we have not received any report on this data leakage incident, and we will investigate fairly and seriously if we receive such a report. Thank you.
今日嘅最後兩位，明報。
你好，明報。
Ming Pao. Like to follow up on the social worker case who was wounded by a police baton. would the police take the initiative to investigate the case? Because after you use a baton, you have to write a report, the number of you have struck, and also the body part the baton was applied to. Because if there's no consequence if you illegally use a baton to beat the head of a person, is that reasonable? And then the social worker said the police officer told him that there was no intention to arrest him but somebody else, but he was only accidentally caught. So will you give an account of the investigation report for the public afterwards? And then yesterday, a 23-year-old man was shot in his right eye by the scrapes of tear gas yesterday, and so was an elderly woman. Many people have been hurt inadvertently by your beanbag bullets and also rubber bullets. We investigate the types of ammunition used by your officers. Do they have to be held criminally liable? Have you surveyed the number of persons injured by firearms of the police since June? Now, for the Prince Edward MTL station, 65 persons were arrested, and according to latest information yesterday, only 2 have been charged for possession of offensive weapon, and a boy aged 15 have been subject to a protection order by the police. So it's been 2 months. Is there any difficulty with the investigation, or is it because there was indiscriminate arrests made by the police? People were arrested, and then they haven't been charged yet. For many persons involved in unlawful assembly riots, they have been charged already. So can you give us an account of the incident in Prince Edward MTL station? I will invite Mr. Lee to take the third question. The first question, I will try to answer it. Regarding the social worker in Mong Kok, he was wounded in his head. I just answered a similar question. I have nothing more to add. I hope the public understand that if injured persons do not proactively provide information to the police, it is hard for the police to get the information through the hospital authority. The person was injured in his head yesterday, and as I said, when the police is taking enforcement action, we don't really like to see people getting hurt. We have taken initiative to follow up on video footage available online. From what we have seen so far, we cannot judge what has happened before and after the incident. And as I said, if the person or anyone else feel aggrieved, they can complain to our capo directly. Now, so long as we can get his contact and what happened at the moment, will be of great help to us in following up the incident. In a violent scene or when in an enforcement operation, if a person is injured, there is a relevant compensation scheme. If it is confirmed that a person was injured by the police during enforcement action, he can follow up under that scheme. I have nothing more to add. Last night, for people watching live coverage, you could see that there were a series of violence acts in Mong Kok, road blockage and arson and junk was set to fire. We issued many verbal warnings asking the lawbreakers to stop such behavior and to leave at once, to no avail. So the police had to stop such violent behavior and to carry out dispersal and arrest operations. We used different weapons. We deployed tear gas as well. We are not too sure about the reasons why people were hurt and also their roles in the incident. Some were wearing respirators. So why were they there? Were they passers-by? Were they demonstrators? Or were they Kwai Fongs living there? Anyway, if innocent citizen who happens to walk past is injured, we send him our condolences. We hope that they can prudently listen to our instructions, because last night we were giving verbal warnings and we appealed to the public as seen, and we also made use of social media and our mass media. We've been giving out messages to ask rioters to stop their illegal and violent behavior. We also appealed to irrelevant, unrelated persons to leave the scenes of violent clashes at once, because indeed it was dangerous. Given the chaos, when we used tear gas, if unfortunately some people were standing in front of rioters and they became collateral damage, that was really very dangerous and undesirable. Every time before we use firearms, wherever possible, we will raise our flags, we will issue warnings, and PPRB will, through various media, tell the community what it was like in the past few months. We've seen how violence has escalated. They started with hurling of miscellaneous items and bricks. Now they have descended to petrol bombs and setting of fires, and they use stun guns and explosives. Is it really a proper place for you to stay around? You really have to think twice. Speakers off mic. We very much want to follow up. First, it is hard to follow up with information from the hospital authority. It's hard to get information from them because of privacy concerns. And if in the course of our enforcement, some people feel that they have been injured because of our action, they would want to lodge a complaint or follow up. We have repeatedly said here that the most important thing is for them to come forward and contact us, because we may just be able to see a man or woman on video footage. It's hard for us to find them. And for cases of accused injuries, alleged injuries, we could not find them, and it's just like a missing piece in the puzzle. No matter how sincere we want to follow up, it would be impossible. On the 31st of August, in the arrest operation inside Prince Edward MTR station, the reporter asked how come only 2 persons have been charged for possession of offensive weapons. Since it's been a while, and what are the difficulties? First, we have to explain to you our prosecution process. First, we have to gather evidence. We have to look for exhibits and witnesses and see if there is any CCTV evidence. We will then compile a report to seek the DOJ's advice to ask which charge is appropriate. There may be back and forth communications with the DOJ. They may have suggestions for us, and we may think that another charge is better. So it takes time.
I can tell you why those two cases took so little time, because they were rather specific and weapons were involved. So in the prosecution process, we could deal with them quickly. As to why we were taking so long with the other cases, well, as I see it, 2 months is not a very long time. We are still following up on cases that happened in June or July because all cases are different. First, well, you have seen that some people were in the station, they changed clothes. Well, the situation was rather chaotic, and some were actually arrested at another station. So we had to see what offenses were committed, and it took time. We are following up, and there is progress. Please be patient. We will be prosecuting people gradually. Last reporter, TVB. Yesterday in Mong Kok, the police used force. You used the pepper balls quite a bit. You were using it against the citizens. Well, your cordon line was at Hong Kong and Shanghai Banking Corporation in Mong Kok. Why do you want to disperse the crowd which is not so close to you with pepper balls? And also the prohibition on face covering regulation, it has been implemented for some time. You said that people need to get used to it, and also there may be a review. But then some police officers are also wearing face covering, and is it that you want to prevent doxing, but actually the court has given you an injunction, and police information cannot be circulated? I think this is the time to show a warrant card and also take off your face covering. And also about Kingston Estate yesterday, well, we understand you have the power to go in to do investigation and search. But why is it that the 30 persons who were searched had to kneel on the ground and they had to put their arms at the back of their head as if they were war criminals? Why did you put them in such a position? Is it that people had to be in a certain physical position for the search? Is it that because you suspected them to have weapons, because people think that it is an insult? As to the first two questions, pepper balls, and also whether we should show a warrant card now that we have the face covering injunction. I know that Mr. Wong would like to give you some information about our operation call sign, and then the third question will be answered by Mr. Kong. Okay, first, your question may make people misunderstand that we have made use of excessive force. You said that we were trying to punish people, but that is not the case. First of all, pepper balls, and also the handheld tear gas. Why is it that there is still a distance between police and the crowd, and yet we want to disperse them? Well, actually, you are asking whether it is effective for the police to use such weapons if we want to disperse the crowd. The reporter is not coming through. Okay, if you ask why we want to disperse the crowd, well, that has nothing to do with what weapons we use. If we want to disperse the crowd, it depends what the crowd of people are doing. After all these months, you can see that any damage is done by first having a group of people gather. If I allow them to gather and block the roads and not deal with them, then they can escalate their action, and they may be vandalizing facilities and hurt people so as to, as they say, express their views. Well, there is a high chance of that happening. If we don't disperse them and disperse them effectively, then we cannot do our job. Therefore, you have to understand why we use weapons. As for pepper balls and also tear gas, whether we should use those, you have to understand something. The pepper ball has to be shot at a person, and it is used at a long range. But as for tear gas or tear smoke, you ask whether it is effective. Well, if the smoke disperses over a long distance, it will be diluted and it may not be effective. However, if the wind is in a certain direction and if there is a geographical situation that allows us to use tear gas or tear smoke to disperse people, well, that is one of our strategies, and you don't need to worry about that. We would use different weapons in different situations in order to achieve our purpose of disposal. Your second question, is this the time to remove our protective gear? I like to say clearly once more, actually I said this many times, we use a mask not to mask our identity. We can certainly show our faces, especially when we enforce the law. But then, if you face petrol bombs that can be hurled at you, if people use a slingshot to shoot certain beads at you, if people use a laser pointer to hurt your eyes, what can you do? As the management, we must allow our officers to have effective protective gear. Well, the eye mask, yes, you're correct. If you say that people can be doxxed, and you say we already have the injunction, and you ask us to remove all our gear on the face, well, I told you about the operation call sign. This last Monday, you were asking when we can provide it to officers. Well, if we want to set up a good system, it takes time, but we have been working these few days, and in the coming 1 or 2 weeks, we will be able to have a call sign for all officers. First, this will reduce the chance or risk of doxing, and we can protect our officers so they can do their job better, and also their privacy can be protected. Of course, the court injunction gives us more confidence in execution of our duties. Sorry, speaker not coming through. Well, I think the question was asked by another reporter. Mr. Wong? Well, let's leave it till later. Let me answer his question first, and I need to give the floor to my colleague to answer the third question. The speaker is not coming through. What do you mean by showing the warrant card? We will always try to show our warrant card. If nobody doxes us, as I said last time, our difficulty is not just about us being doxed, but when you work, you have to be also thinking about the safety of your own children. Now, I'd like to ask, where is social justice? If you ask us to show everything and you say that we are protected by the injunction, so we are safe, well, how can I give confidence to my frontline officers? Well, I have to do a good job with the operation call signs so that the public can recognize us, and then our officers can also take up the duties to enforce the law. Next. Sorry, reporter, can you stop for a while? The reporter from Stan News. You are taking the chance of other reporters. Sorry. On another occasion. Why don't you write into the newsroom where we have a time limit for these press conferences? I think the third question should be answered by Mr. Kong. Talk about the Kingston Estate incident. As I said, large batches of citizens, some of them violent, gathered outside the Tai Hing operational base. We saw that some individuals had weapons with them. When our warnings were ineffective, we dispersed them and we made arrests. We saw dozens running into a building in Kingston Estate. I said that we arrested over 30 people that night. When we had to control so many arrestees, we had to be mindful about the safety of our colleagues, the arrestees, and other people, and also security of the arrestees.
Many arrestees had to kneel or sit down or squatted down, and that was not really something new. You could check old records. When the police had mass arrests, you could see people kneeling, squatting, or sitting on the floor. Let me reiterate, since we have to control so many arrestees, we had difficulties. In particular, in the past few months, we have seen how lethal the weapons are being used by the violent demonstrators, and sometimes people will snatch the arrestees from us. Now you can try this out. Would you run away faster, sitting down, squatting, kneeling, or standing? We just want to slow down their speed of running away. Whether we had any intention to humiliate them, the answer is certainly no. And we didn't ask them to kneel, treating them as war prisoners. Such remarks came from different media. Such was a description used by other media. We've never used such a term. I think the press conference ends here. Thank you very much. Thank you.